All right. So we're moving on to the ZBrush top tips. Again, these are going to be, we're going to be playing a video from an artist that we've asked to kindly put together a tip that they like to use inside of ZBrush. Again, people, these tips are going to be 15 minutes or less. And then myself and Joseph Drust are going to add little things here and there where we can for these tips as well, and maybe even show you other things, okay?
Can I do a tip before we even start?
Sure.
Can I do a starter tip? So Kyle, can you give me the screen here? So this is one that was asked. So basically, yeah. So if you have any questions during any of these tips, put them in the chat, because me and Paul, we love going on tangents, and we'll gladly go on a tangent and try to explain something for you. So definitely we're going to recap after these videos. So if you've been watching, you watched James, how he went through, James Kane, he went through and had that base mesh set up initially where it was all in parts and you could move it around and change the positions of it. And we had a question asking, well, how can you do that? So I'm gonna go through two little things here quick, and then we'll get into the tip videos. So here I just have the demo dog here. And let's say we wanna break this dog into sections. So I want his head to be a separate part so I can move it around, maybe reposition it, but not have to worry about the rest of the body going with it. So there's two quick ways you can do this. First, if you hold down Control and Shift, you're gonna see you're gonna get a select rectangle brush. And if you click on this, in here you have a list of brushes you can change this to. And the one I'm looking for in here is called the Slice Curve Brush. And if I select the Slice Curve Brush and now come across my dog model here, and get out of perspective, and just draw this out, you're going to see, as I draw this out, it's going to give a different color to the model that was just sliced. Now this one's a little bit faint, so let me try it again so we can get a little different one you can see a little better. And so this is called a polygroup. And so what happened here is the model was sliced, and then a new polygroup was generated where that slice line was at. And this is cutting through the topology or mesh. So it's making new topology as you do this. So if I undo this and then hold Control and Shift and draw this out, you see it's going to slice right through. Now after this is sliced, you can now isolate this. So if I hold down Control and Shift again and then select, say, the Select Rectangle brush, I can now isolate by these parts. So right now I've sliced through this model and I now have two different areas on this mesh. Now after you have this, we can go to Geometry over here, we can go to Modify Topology, and in here we have a Unweld Groups Border option, and this will now break that division. So those polygroups there after that slice was generated, those points are still connected, but now I'm unwelding those points. So now these are seen as two separate geometry islands. So I can take this head and say move this up a little bit up here and detach it from the body, and now you can see I have those two different parts. Now if you want these to be solid, which is what I find out kind of helps if you're working on a model to position it and you have all these segmented meshes, you can come over here and you can run this Close Holes option. This is located in Tool, Geometry, Modify Topology, Close Holes. This will now seal those holes up, and so now I have the dog's head broken off as that new part. I can now come under the polygroups area here and do an auto groups. This is going to assign a polygroup to the geometry areas. And now I can move around the head wherever I want it. I can mask this out as a separate object. So it kind of gives you more freedom. So you can come through and just take a model and slice it up. Now the other way you can do it is with masking. So this is another quick one here. And for this, if I come across a part of a model, so let's say I come across the back of the dog here, I'm just going to mask this out. If you have a mask on your mesh here, you can come over here to the tool and then down to the polygroups or the masking area. And in here you have a, where's it at? Actually, is it in here? No, it's in polygroups.
Geometry edge loop.
No, he's going, I was going to go this way instead.
Oh, okay.
So group masked, clear mask, and this will apply a polygroup to the masked area. And so that will now give you that polygroup, and then you can do that split again. And then the one Paul was talking about is in the tool geometry edge loop area here, and you have an edge loop masked border. And when you click this, this is going to take that masked area and it's going to generate a border around it. So this is going to give you a little cleaner result of that. And you can see it has an extra polygroup through there. And then after you have this generated, you can then now isolate those parts. You can do that unweld groups border again that we did on the initial part and break it up into segments. So those are the two quick ways in which you can take a model that's solid and split it up into little parts. And then you can move them around, reposition them, sculpt on them separately. Paul mentioned also doing the geometry dynamesh area here. There is a groups option. You can turn that on, and when you dynamesh, it'll look at those polygroups, and it's going to do a close hole function and then dynamesh those separately. So then you can work that way as well and have all these different parts that are dynamesh objects. You can move them around, position them a little bit easier, and then go like that. So there you go, Paul. There's the first one, starting it off.
No, I want one now. I want one now. This isn't fair. I want a real fast, really fast. Okay. So
yes, and Control W is also the hotkey for that group mask, clear mask.
We got to get into the video, right? Because we definitely want you guys to see what these artists have put together. But one thing I wanted to also talk about, because I think the way James is working is awesome. That's actually the way I also work. I like to make it in pieces. So just like
the same thing.
Said, he's making like slices here, right? That are making different polygroups, right? And you guys, James Kane had his stuff all grouped in pieces, right? To make it easier for posing and things like that. I think that's amazing, a perfect workflow. It's awesome because it's kind of like a non-destructive way to move because you can weld at any point in time. It's easy, right? So I know people were asking about dynamesh, right? So when you go to dynamesh this, right, it'll keep the polygrouping how we want them, right? But James wanted them to be split off into parts. Okay, so if you guys turn on this groups option right here, right, see that right there, that groups option next to dynamesh, this is looking at polygrouping now, okay? So when you guys go to redynamesh, these are now actually pieces, right? So the benefit to this is no matter what you do now, as long as one of the pieces is a complete polygroup, they'll stay a separate piece, right? So this is another little quick tip I think is awesome. I use this all the time. In fact, this is how I start all my models with dynamesh. I like to call it dynasketching now. With that
dynasketch.
Yeah, I like to call it dynasketching now for me, right? And so now these pieces are separate. So at any point in time, see, I can move this piece completely separate, and I can even sculpt on it. And then when I redynamesh, you see there's no welding happening. That's the beauty of this. All right. So that's me. We got to get into these videos. I don't want to take away from
we could just do this on our own for like ever.
We gotta go. Problem. So we're gonna play a video for you guys. This is how this is gonna work. We're gonna play a video for you guys. And then after the video, Joseph and I are going to do exactly what we were just doing right there. We'll constrain ourselves. And
yeah, we probably won't do it for all of them. We've watched these videos ahead of time, so we know what that's kind of going to be shown to them. So we have some little notes, but a lot of the tips we got are, they're very well done. So there's not really going to be much for us to comment on. Yeah.
But be in the chat. Be in the chat, okay? Because we're going to be here still chatting with you, okay? Mm-hmm. So our first video is going to be from Mr. Michael Poplovich. So everyone buckle up. He's got a great tip for you guys all to see. So we're going to go right into that video for this segment.
Hey everybody, this is Michael Pavlovich, and I've been using ZBrush since before I graduated college, so sometime around 2004, and it's been my asset pipeline backbone ever since. What we're going to do here is put a decorative cloth around this genie character, and it's a fairly simple process. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down here to Insert. I'm just going to grab a simple plane. I'm going to hit W to go into gizmo mode, hold down Shift, and just move this to -90 degrees, and then I'm going to move this up so it's right below his chin here. So essentially I'm going to relax this cloth on his body, but first we have to cut a pattern in this cloth. So let's hit Q to go back into draw mode, go into polyframe mode here. I'm going to hold down Shift and snap to the top here, and I'm going to turn on transparency with ghost turned off. Your transparency and ghost may be further down. I'm going to hold down Control Shift, and we're going to select slice circle. Now if I go into the stroke here, you're going to see center's turned on. So I can click right in the middle of his head, and we're just going to slice where his neck hole will be. And then one more time right in the middle of his head, out to his shoulders, and give him some more cloth towards the front and the back. So now you can see we have 3 polygroups here, a green, a light yellow green, and a green and a yellow. All I really want is this yellow pattern. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift and click, and we now have this geometry. I'm going to say geometry, go down here to modify topology, and then just say delete hidden. So now I want to make this geometry a little bit nicer. You can see there's some triangles in there. So I'm going to go to Geometry, ZRemesher. We're going to go to Adaptive Size down to 0. Let's go ahead and hit double so we can get some more geo going. And I'm also going to hit X to go into X symmetry here to get a nice symmetrical result. So now I hit ZRemesh. It's going to go ahead and give me some nice geo. If you want, you can just keep hitting this button. Or you know what? We can actually go, let's go same and then ZRemesh again. And there we go, we got that nice edge loops all around the entire object here. So let's go out of transparency mode. And over here you can see I have this docking area over here. You just double click those double arrows, and then I'm going to take this dynamics menu, grab that white dot, throw it over here to the left, and I want to use gravity to pull this down initially. So we're going to have gravity turned on. I'm going to take that gravity strength down so it falls a little bit slower. And then I'm going to go down here to my collision volume and turn that on. That's going to tell ZBrush everything else in my scene that's not selected. You can see the cloth is selected here. It's going to collide with. So with that set, let's go ahead and run the simulation. You're going to see it's going to fall right on my character. Perfect. Now it is kind of spaced out kind of far away from my character, so let's hit Ctrl Z. Let's take this inflate next to collision volume, tap that number, hit 0.5 and hit enter, and then that'll go ahead and recalculate it for me. We can rerun the simulation. Now it'll fall a little bit closer to his body. Now to stop the simulation, I just clicked in my document and moved, or you can just click that button again. So now we have the beginnings of our cloth. It's a little bit low res, but that's okay, because what we can do here is we can go in here to geometry, open up dynamic subdiv, and click on that dynamic button. The shortcut for that is D and then Shift D to turn it off. So if I hit D to turn it on, we can say always yes, and now I can just hop back and forth between those. Another really cool thing we can do under dynamic is we can open up, we're going to crank up this thickness a little bit and give us a little bit of dynamic thickness. Now you're going to see as I move this up, it's kind of out from the middle. So our real geometry is in the middle, and then it's giving us a dynamic thickness up and down. Let's change this offset to 100, and you're going to see it's going to go all the way up. So our real geometry is at the bottom. Now if we go to negative 100, it's going to put our fake geometry inwards. So I think that looks pretty good, and I think we can work with this. Let's go ahead and take our smooth subdiv down to 0, and we're just going to have this low res geo here. Let's go ahead and say apply. So now, because again, if we turn off dynamic, it's just a preview mesh. We turn it on, it looks like there's geometry there, but it's not really there. If we want it to be real geo, go over here to dynamic, hit apply, and now this is real geometry. So if you want to, you can we can start modeling some more detail on here. So for example, I can go to BZM to our Z modeler brush. We can hover over, you can see we have a yellow polygroup on either side. So if I hover over a face, hold down the space bar, say Q mesh, polygroup all, we can pull out, and then on this green one, we can pull up, and now we have a little bit of piping in around our cloth here. If we go back in here to dynamic, or we hit D to turn that back on, you're going to see it kind of does a weird thing. That's because we have thickness turned on still. Let's go ahead and turn that thickness down so we don't have any thickness, but we do want to turn smooth subdiv up to 2. So that way it'll give us a preview of what it would look like if we hit this divide button a couple times. It's non-destructive, so we can hit Shift D to turn it off and then D to turn that back on. Now we got a little bit more detail going in this cloth. So now let's say we want to add some stitching to this cloth. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go out of edit mode. You can hit T or just go out of edit mode with this button and then say always switch. Hit Control N to clear our canvas. Then we're going to go back into our tool palette. We're going to go ahead and choose, doesn't really matter, we'll choose the Polymesh 3D star, drag it on our canvas, go back into edit mode, and at the very bottom here, you're going to see an initialize field. Let's go ahead and say, now if you grabbed any of those other Polymesh 3D, Polymesh objects, you're going to have to say, you know, if you did like a ring 3D, say make Polymesh 3D, and then at the very bottom, you'll get this initialize menu that has these options, I should say. So let's go ahead and hit Q cube. So we have a very nice simple cube. We'll go ahead and turn polyframe back on. We'll hit W, and we'll go ahead and scale this out a little bit. I'm going to make this a little bit thinner, so we're going to thin this out like this. And let's hit Q to go back into draw mode. We'll go back into our Z modeler brush, BZM, hover over an edge this time, hold down space bar, and let's say bevel edge loop complete. So that'll give us a few more areas where we can bend this geometry. If you want to have even more geo, you can go through here, you can bevel this one and then just tap this one to get the exact same amount. So now that we have that, we're getting a lot of polygroups in here. If you want, just hit Control W. That'll make all of these one polygroup. Let's hit W. Go into the little gear icon here. We're going to say bend arc, and we're going to grab this green cone, and we're going to pull this down, and we're going to take this this white cone, and we're going to pull it to the right just to change that radius. So we have a nice, basically a little stitch here. So if I hit W or Q to go back into draw mode, and then I hit D to go back into dynamic, you're going to see we get a little stitch on here. Now for now, it's kind of a simple stitch. So let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's hit W. I'm going to hold down Control and drag out a copy of this. And on this one, we're going to hold down Shift, and we're going to rotate this one 45 degrees, and we're going to put it back in the middle. We're going to Control click in our canvas to invert our mask, hold down Shift, and then rotate this one 45 degrees. And you know what? Let's move this one down a little bit here. So let's hit Q to go back into draw mode, Control drag in our canvas, and now we have basically a stitch that can repeat. Now when we drag this out on our object, what it's going to do is if hit W and then Control drag out a copy and then let go of Control, it's going to end up looking like this. So let's hit Control Z to undo that. We'll go Q to go back into draw mode, and I'm going to go into hit B to go into my brush menu. Let's say create insert mesh, new, and this is cool too. You can just make an insert mesh brush. So you can go through here on any object and just insert this on there. However, what we want to do is attach this brush object here to a curve. So we're going to go over here to stroke, under here into the curve menu, hit turn on curve mode. And so now when I drag this out, let's go ahead and make our draw size a little bit bigger, say maybe 50. You can also hit S on your keyboard to change your draw size. And if you drag out a curve now, you're going to see we have this object being repeated along this curve. If you go in here to stroke and you make your curve step larger, you're going to see it's going to space them out more. And then if I go in here to stroke and then make our curve step smaller, like 0.6, it's going to pack them closer together. So let's go ahead and dial this in. Let's say 1.5. Hit enter, and then as we drag on this curve, it's going to update that curve. So if we like this brush, what we can do is we can go up here to our brush and we can say, hold down Alt, select icon. That'll give us a new icon here. I'm going to go to Save As, and we're going to throw this right into our C, Program Files, Pixologic, ZBrush 2021, ZBrushes. I have a _IMM folder I put in here, and we're just going to call this Stitches. So now when I hit the comma key to bring up the Lightbox menu, under the Brush tab here, we can go all the way over here to where I have my IMM folder, and then right in here you're going to see we have a new Stitches brush. So I can always grab that anytime I want. So let's go back to our character here, and you see we're back here with this cloth. And what I can do is, if I turn on polyframe, I basically want to put stitches all the way around where the red border polygroup is. So what I can do is let's do Shift D to turn off dynamic temporarily. I'm going to hold down Control Shift, isolate, and tap just to isolate the red polygroup here. I'm going to go back into the stroke menu, and then under curve functions, we don't need polygroups, we don't need creased edges, we need that open border. So we're going to hit frame mesh, and that's going to frame that open border here. I can hold down Control Shift and tap in my document to bring all my geo back. And you're going to see we now have a curve around this open border here. So what I want to do is put stitches right along that curve. Let's go ahead and hit D to turn dynamic back on. And another thing I want to do is I'm going to turn off X symmetry. Just tap X on my keyboard so I don't get overlapping stitches. So I'm going to hit B to go back into my brush menu. Make sure you have your stitches brush selected, and then when you tap on your mesh here, you're going to see it's going to update that curve with stitches. Now, if you want to get rid of these curves here, you can tap on an object away from that curve, and it'll go ahead and get rid of that curve, or you can go up here to stroke, curve functions, and hit the delete key. You're also going to see the stitches are masked out. So if I want those in their own subtool, I go down here to subtool, under the tool subtool menu, and say split masked points, and now those are going to be in their own subtool here. So let's do one last thing here. Let's put some like decorative patterns on this cloth. So I'm going to take this cloth here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this off. I'm going to go into solo mode, which may be down here at the bottom for you, and I'm going to say dynamic apply, and that's going to give us real subdivisions here, so you see I can go back and forth between them. However, if I turn off polyframe, I hold down Control, we'll be in mask pin, and let's go ahead and turn X symmetry back on just by clicking X on our keyboard. You're going to see we're not getting a whole lot of resolution, so I'm going to hit Control D or hit the divide key a couple times, and now we get a lot better resolution along here. So really simply, I'm just going to go through here. We're just going to do like a decorative pattern, just like loop up here, and then we'll kind of loop around here, and then we'll just do another loop off here. So what I want to do is make this into geometry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, delete lower, turn on our polyframe again, and essentially I want to turn this mask into its own polygroup. However, I can do that right now. I can hit Control W again, and that's going to give us kind of an alias looking line. So let's undo that. Let's go down here to geometry, edge loop, click this edge loop mask border. That gives a little bit of a cleaner cut around here. And now if I Control drag to unmask, you're going to see we get a brand new polygroup. So let's go ahead and hold down Control Shift and isolate that polygroup here. And again, one more time, we're going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and Delete Hidden. And we have X symmetry turned on. So if I go to ZRemesher, half, tap the size down to 0 and hit ZRemesh, this will give us nice clean geometry. In fact, we can keep hitting half, get this as low as you feel like you want to. This looks pretty good to me. So let's go out of solo mode here. And one more time, we're going to go to B, Z, M to go to our Z modeler brush. Hover over a face again, Q mesh, polygroup all again. Just pull up. That'll give us some thickness along here. Now we have polygroups here, so if we want, we can also go in here to this crease menu. We have a bevel width. Let's hold down Control, and if we hold down Control and pull along that bevel width, you see we get a bevel along our polygroup, so that'll give us a little bit of a nicer shape here. And then again, if you hit D on your keyboard, that'll give you a dynamically smooth mesh. And anytime you want to select a subtool, just hold down Alt and tap, and you'll get that subtool. Over here on this dynamic, I'm going to say smooth div at subdiv of 3. That'll give us an even smoother result. So now if I go over here, I can hold down Shift, touch the eyeball off to turn everything off, and then hold down Shift and turn the eyeball to touch everything back on. And now you can see I have all my subtools back on. We have some cloth, we have some stitching, we have some kind of decorative embedded other cloth here. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. You know, it's kind of fun to go in here and see what kind of functionality you can get with ZBrush, especially with the new features that are in ZBrush 2021. And happy ZBrushing.
All right. So there we go. I want to share something, okay? So let's show my ZBrush.
Wait. What are you sharing?
What? Don't worry.
I got some stuff to share too. I added some. I told you I wasn't going to share on this one, but I want to share
knew
too.
It. See? You just can't get enough, man. You always got to share. Okay. So to the Keyshot 9 question, that's not our product. That's Luxian's product. So they don't offer free upgrades like we do. So you'd have to... They do if you bought the product within a certain time before they launch something like their next version, Keyshot 10. But you'd have to go to their website and look. Okay, so someone asked about the deformers, because I want to show this too, because there was the point where he came over here and did the quick cube, right? Which is pretty much standing for quick cube, right? And then he did this, right? And then he did in the Z modeler. Do you guys remember this part of the video? And he beveled, and then he went and clicked here, and he was adding bevels and stuff through here. Okay, so something else that I want to share that I love to use. I'm going to share it on. I'll put it on this model because it'll just really see the power of it. Is he also went into deformers here? Okay, and one deformer again. That's one of my favorite deformers. I'm telling you, I use this a ton. Is the extender. Okay, so I'm going to click extender here, and then it's going to pull up my cones. So all the orange cones are the extending cones. The gray cones here that I'm highlighting right now, these are sizing cones. Okay, that's a sizing cone. It's going to size things. The yellow cone here is going to apply a creasing. Okay, and then what's important are these cones, the red, blue, green. Those are your axes, Y, X, and Z. Okay, and then this white cone is going to allow us to do a resolution movement. Okay, so for example, people, if I click on this orange cone right here and pull, you can see the sphere has now become like a pill in essence. And you've got a new polygroup, okay, in the middle. And then you've got creasing. You guys can see, here, I'll move in closer so you guys can see the creasing. Look at the part here in the line, the green line to the orange line. You'll see when I see the creasing appear and reappear. So that's what that does, okay? And then this cone over here will inflate the surface, right? So you can get something like that. Or you can go the opposite and deflate the surface. Okay, so these cones, this red one is saying do symmetry along the X, right? That's what's happening here. So in the beauty of this is I can put this back to 0, then I can pull on the Y, and now I got a shape like that from a sphere, right? That's where I started. Remember, I started from a sphere. And then now that I've done them in both directions, I can inflate out and get something like that, or do the opposite and inflate in. Like, this is a great way to work. Now, the other thing that came up, the person was asking. So let me do it on something a little bit. Let's do it on a cube. Okay, so you guys can see this. So the gizmo is driving your deformers. However this is in the world, this is where your symmetry. So I just showed you guys, I pulled symmetrically along the Y, and I pulled symmetrically along the X. It's not about the world symmetry. It has nothing to do with that. It's the gizmo. So what I mean by that is if I hold down the Alt key, A-L-T, Alt, and then I move this, you can see I can move the gizmo, but it's not moving the object. Now, if I throw a Shift key in there, so I'm holding down both the Alt key and the Shift key, I'm going to go 45 degrees, right? So you can see you can snap to different degrees here, whatever you want. That gizmo now is on that angle. So guess what also is on that angle? If I go back here, throw extender, bam, The gizmo's also on that. This is like a Lisa needs braces moment, people. Look up here, look up here, look up here. Right? So when you pull on that orange cone right now that I'm highlighting, the other side's going to happen now too, right? So you can start pulling things and messing with things because it's looking at these cones for how the symmetry is going to work, right? Okay? I'm going to kick it to Joseph now because we've got tips after tips coming in. Like I said, guys, we're going to be hitting you over.
We got a lot of these, yeah.
We're going to be hitting you over the head.
I messed up. Let's get my screen going.
Why don't you share your screen, Drust, so people can
Yeah, maybe I'll do that.
You know, why don't you open up your life a little bit to us, okay? It's all right.
I think I got it.
It looks like Drust can't even, he's trying to figure out still how to share screen. You got to give him a moment. He might know ZBrush, but he's still trying to figure out this streaming thing right now.
Well, you went on and on about how I was going back and forth between Mac and Windows. I never like being on the Mac side.
Do you have your screen ready now that they can see?
I do.
Boys in the booth, can you show Joseph's screen for us, please?
It's the one that's moving.
It's the one that's moving.
I'm gonna have to mime this.
You're just tell me what to do from step by step by step. And then we'll go from there. Okay? That's what we're going to do here, right?
Hold on, let me retry this. Let's see if we can get it to work again. Oh, here we go. Okay, how about now? Is that working better? There we go. Look at that. Look at that. All right, so a few things. Paul kept adding more. So first thing, Paul mentioned that rotation. If you guys want to change your rotation for the gizmo, so if you switch to the gizmo, you hold down Shift and click, it's going to do it based on 5-degree angles. If you want to change this to a different angle, there's a miscellaneous utility up here, and there's a little snap angle slider. You can change this and then set the snap angle, and that will allow you to get that gizmo to snap at different angles if you wanted something other than 5. So by default, if you just rotate normally, it's going to give you just kind of free rotation. And if you hold down Shift, it's going to do 5 degrees. But if you want to change it, there's this little slider in that miscellaneous utilities. Now, one question we had in chat while Pavlovich's video was going on was a question about dynamic and how high should you put this smooth subdivision slider. So this smooth subdivision slider, what it's doing, it's giving you a preview of what the model would look like if it was divided traditionally, like coming up here and clicking divide. So if I take this shape and I click divide, you can see this divided up to subdivision 4, and this is what I'm getting, right? So it's just taking the model and dividing it. Now, if I undo this and I go now and have dynamic active, and now I start changing the smooth subdivision slider, it's going to give you a preview of what the model will look like if it was traditionally divided. So the question was asking about, like, well, how high should you go on this? Well, the higher you go, just remember, it's giving you a preview of that model that is divided with traditional subdivisions. So the higher you go, the more topology that mesh is going to be. So this is giving you a preview, but it's still going to be taxing on your computer. So if you don't have to go all the way up to like the smooth subdivision of 7 to get the result you're looking for, it's going to give you better performance. So you don't go through here and just crank this. Use it kind of, you know, I'm missing the word right now, but sparingly. So you use it if you need it, but if you don't need it all the way up, don't put it all the way up. Because remember, it's just giving you kind of the preview of what it would look like if it was divided traditionally. And if you render in BPR, it's going to basically do the computation of it being divided in traditional subdivisions and give you the preview. So little thing there on that. And then one more here. So the other one that Pavlovich showed, which is one of my favorite ones, but it's a hidden feature in here. And so he took that shape and he kind of generated this beveling around it. And this is done by having a model that has polygrouping. So this model here has polygrouping. If you want to change your polygrouping really quick using the ZBrush to get it be like kind of like a boxed map polygroup, you can go and grab the ZBrush, and if you cover over one of the polys and then press spacebar to go in the ZBrush poly action menu, in here if you set it to polygroup and then you set your target to all polygons, down here you have some different modifiers that will allow you to change how the polygrouping is being applied. So for a shape like this, I can come over here and say if I only want 3 sides, I can select 3 sides. And now if I select this, it's just going to give me 3 polygroups based on it coming from 3 sides. So if the model's in the center of the world, you're going to get front, back, and then the sides, right? So 3 sides polygrouping. So now you can see as I rotate this around, I have a polygroup here and then polygroups on the side. Now, after you have this polygrouping on a mesh, if you come over to the tool geometry crease area, there's this bevel width slider. Now, the hidden feature that Pavlovich showed in his video is you hold down Control, and then where these polygroups break, if you drag this button here, it's now going to bevel. So you can see I'm holding down the control key on my keyboard here, and I'm changing the bevel width slider, and it's basically separating those polygroups and giving me a beveled edge in between them. So that's that little tip that Pavlovich was showing. Now, when you use this feature, it works the best with surfaces that are convex. So if you think about a spoon, the part where you actually put your cereal in and eat is the concave side, and the other side is the convex side. So if you have shapes that are kind of doing this, not this, this is where this kind of bevel width slider is going to give you the best results. You can take any object that has polygrouping on it, hold down control, drag the bevel width slider, and it'll split those polygroups apart and then generate topology between them. So there you go, Paul.
All right, we got to move on to the next video here, right? So guys, again, we're just going to keep playing some videos here, some great tips, and this is what Joseph and I are going to do. We're going to just keep adding and showing you more things and answering questions for you. All right, so let's move on to video number 2. Boys in the booth, let's play that second video.
Hey everyone, hope you're having a great ZBrush Summit. My name is Pablo Munoz Gomez. I'm a 3D concept and character artist, and I've been using ZBrush for almost 10 years, but my first contact with the software was around 2006. And in the past few years, really, it's become one of my, my go-tools to do everything, really. So I use it on almost on a daily basis. So today, I just want to show you a couple of tips on how to work and how to deal with one of my favorite features in ZBrush, which is fiber mesh. And obviously, it's that the feature, the thing that I used to create the hair and the fur for this creepy creature. So I'm going to start by showing you some tips and tricks on how to deal with it and how to grow the fiber mesh, and then how to groom it or give it a bit of shape, because it can be a little bit tricky, especially if you don't know some of the settings. So I have prepared this project just to give you an idea of what you can achieve fairly quickly, really, with this fiber mesh. But I'm going to start simple with a sphere. And I have this standard ZBrush UI. And the way that you grow fiber mesh in just a couple of clicks is very easy. I'm going to hold Control, and that's accessing my masking brushes to mask the top of this sphere. I'm going to hold Control and click on the mask to blur it, right? And then I'm just going to go down in the tool palette to my fiber mesh sub palette. I'm going to click on Preview, and that's it. You have fiber mesh. Right? Now, there are a couple of things that is important to kind of like get right from the beginning. One is you can go in 2 ways, basically, or take 2 different avenues. One is with the fiber mesh settings, sort of like establishing the look and feel of the fiber mesh with the settings, and the other one is with the grooming. And I say that it's kind of like 2 different ways, because if you are going to groom, or if you're going to basically give shape with the grooming brushes, you're going to basically override all the settings that you set up in the settings. So I'm going to explain that in a second. So basically, if now that we have fiber mesh, we can go ahead and start tweaking the settings to change the shape, the color, and you can create a bunch of different things, not just hair or fur. So for instance, let's reduce the max fibers, and that's reducing the number. And by the way, this is just a preview. We haven't actually created, so we can keep tweaking this. I'm going to increase the length, for example, take the gravity off so that they're kind of like shooting straight up. Here with this color, we can change, let's create some weird roses or something like that. So you have the tip and you have the base. So I gave the base a green color and the tip a red color. And you have this color profile that allows you to change how much influence of each color you have. So the left-hand side is the root and the right-hand side is the tip. So if I give more prominence to the green color, to the root, I can click to add a point and just drag this like so. And now we have more of that color. Let's make it a little bit darker, right? And then we also have these settings here to colorize the base. So right now it's at 0.5. I'm going to give it 100% to 1. Now we have that full influence of that color, right? The other thing that we can do is go to the width profile. I'm going to reset this one. And the width profile allows you to change the thickness of the entire fur or the entire fiber. So I'm going to increase the coverage, and that's just the overall width. As you can see, I'm just increasing the thickness of this in a way. I'm going to set the root scale to 1 and the tip to 1 as well. Not to 10, sorry, to 1 and 1. I have to press enter. There we go. And with the width profile, I can change this. So I'm going to take the root down. So you see the beginning of that fiber becomes really small, and I'm going to take the tip all the way up, right? It becomes really, really thick. Now I can just start adding points and variate that thickness So we can add maybe a couple more points here just to sharpen this. And you can also click on this surrounding circle as well, just to make it a bit sharper. There we go. So you see, it's pretty easy how you can just tweak this and generate a bunch of different looks to your fibers. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe add a bit of twist just to rotate each fiber on itself. And if anything, we can add some maybe revolve radius. And this revolve radius is going to create kind of like a curl effect, right? So all I'm doing right now is just altering the settings of the fiber mesh, right? And let's say I'm happy with this, but I want to further tweak it, right? I'm going to go ahead and click accept. And I'm going to get this pop-up when I have plenty of fibers asking me if I want to activate fast preview render or fast preview mode. I'm going to click no in this instance. And ZBrush now created from those settings a new fiber mesh or a new subtool, right? So now we have, if I go into solo mode, I have the sphere, we can clear that mask, and I have the fibers, right? So in the fibers, I can just go ahead and click on the brush palette. Let me just put that here on the right so you can see properly. I'm going to click on the thumbnail, or the brush thumbnail, and I'm going to use something like this one, the chrome hair toss. So hopefully you can see that, yep. All right, I'm going to grab that, increase the brush size, and I'm going to start grooming this, right? And that's how easy you can just start giving this fiber mesh some more kind of like a flow or an intentionality. Now the issue here, or not the issue, but in a way the alternative workflow that I wanted to mention is, because I set up all the settings from the fiber mesh settings really, when I start grooming this, I'm basically overriding all that twist, all that revolve radius, all that gravity thing. So in a way, you have those two avenues. You have the option to go with fiber mesh settings and create something that looks really cool, like I just did there with some settings, press accept, and then you have the fiber mesh. And the other way is just to keep it very, very simple, which is what I do in most of the cases for grooming, and then use the grooming brushes to alter the shape of it. So that's what I'm going to show you very quickly. I'm going to jump into this creature, right? And I'm going to show you the second method, the second workflow, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the fibers. And I'm going to also turn off the poly paint. And you'll see I already have prepared this mask. Very similar to what I just did with the sphere. I'm going to go to the preview, create these fibers, and these are almost like the default settings. So the first thing I like to do is change the base to white and the tip to white as well. So we have a pretty clean set of fibers and I can see clearly what I'm doing. The second thing I like to do is change my document size. So you'll notice even if I get closer, there is a bit of a weird artifacts all around, and that's just because of the thickness of the fiber mesh, and it has to do with the way that ZBrush handles the anti-aliasing. So for that, you can click on AA half, and they'll see the half of the document, and you'll see that the fibers are a little bit more clearer and sharper, but the document is smaller. So I'm going to go to document and put that here so you can see what I'll do. Document, I'm going to click on double, and that's just simply going to double the document. I'm going to hold Control and N to clear, drag my creature again, and go to AA half. Perfect. So now I have similar kind of like document size to work with, but I have anti-alias now. Great. So let's go back to our fibers. And like I said, the settings here are relatively unchanged. Like I won't add twist or rotation or gravity, any of those things, because I'm gonna use the grooming technique or the grooming approach. What I want to change is the amount of fibers, of course. So in this case, I want to have a few more fibers, like so, and I want to increase the segments. So the segments is the amount of subdivision of each fiber. At the moment, I have 7 subdivision. The more subdivision that you add, the softer is going to appear when you groom it. But I'm going to get to that in just a second. I think 6 should be fine, and we have a max fibers of 11, and this number is in the thousands, so 11,000 fibers, right? Which is fine. I think it looks good, and you see it's just growing from that mask that I masked previously. So I'm going to go ahead and click on accept, and I'm going to get the same fast preview notification. In this case, I'm going to click on yes, and I'm going to show you a couple of techniques as well, or tricks to deal with it. So now that I have accepted the fiber mesh, we should have a new subtool, and it's automatically selected. The next thing that I like to do to be able to deal with fiber mesh is to see it a little bit clearer. So I like to select something, let's say something like a yellowish color for the fibers, and go to the color palette. Let's drop that here as well. And I'm going to click on fill object. Make sure that RGB is enabled, and fill object, and make sure that RGB is set to 100 so that we can fill the entire object. There we go. Now, because I don't have poly paint in all the subtools, just in the fiber mesh, I can simply just change the color to something like a blue color, and I would be able to see something very contrasted and basically see where the gaps of the fibers are. So it's just an easy way to see what you're doing, right? Then if we go back to the fiber mesh palette, right? Right now, obviously, everything is grayed out because we already created, but if you go down to the preview settings, right, here's where you have the fast preview, that notification that we got. So if I click this to turn it off, you will see the real set of fibers, right? Now, this is great because you can kind of like use guides to guide the entire set of fiber mesh when you're grooming. So I'm going to enable this, and I'm going to reduce the previs visibility. So now I'm going to go for something like 6 or 8, and you'll see that it just reduces the amount of fibers that we can actually see. And that is much easier to work with. So I have the groom hair toss selected. I'm going to increase the brush size, and I'm going to start just grooming this, without RGB, so that I don't paint it, which you can also do, by the way. We had it in 7 or 8, something like that, right? And I'm using a large brush so that you can see how quick this is, right? So that's just a very quick grooming of the creature's hair. But now, if I turn this off, you see the few guides that we moved and that we changed, they're basically guides for the rest of the fibers. So it's very easy. Obviously, you can keep tweaking these once you turn this off, but it's just a very simple way to go about it. And finally, just to complete this sort of trick on dealing with fiber mesh and be able to control this a little bit better, there are two things that I would suggest you do. The first one is from the brush palette, which I should already have here. When you select any grooming brush, right, you can go to the fiber mesh sub palette here, and there is this setting called the front collision tolerance, or detection tolerance, and that basically allows you to change the gap that buffer between the fiber and the surface of the model. So if I do this, maybe from a different angle here, right, and it rotate around, you see there is a gap between the fiber and the actual model. So that's this collision tolerance. So I'm going to undo that, set this to 5, or something around there, like a number around there, and then I have a bit more of freedom to get these fibers closer to the mesh. And the final trick to deal with fiber mesh is using polygroups and masking. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on polygroups, right? And if you hold the control key using the mask with a smaller brush size, you can just literally paint the mask. And what's great about this technique is that as you paint the mask, you actually painting or creating a mask for the entire fiber, regardless of where you touch. So now that I created this simple mask, I'm going to go ahead and hold Control and W, and now we have polygroups. So this is great, again, because we can hold Control and Shift, right, to isolate this, mask that. We can turn off polygroup now, bring the rest, invert the mask, and we can start splitting these and create kind of like this effect, right? If you want to give him this creature some more intentional hairstyle or something like that. But there you have it. It's a pretty simple trick. Hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to deal with fiber mesh and make the whole workflow a little bit easier. Enjoy the rest of the summit.
Back. All right, my turn. I got something to add to this, especially the conversation. Okay. For me, one of the best features in fiber mesh doesn't get used. And I'm going to show it to you because I think this is one of the strongest features of fiber mesh. So obviously, when you guys go in here and you hit preview, Yes, we've got a hairy man.
And so you're always angry about this one too. You're always like, no one uses this. No one uses this.
I am angry about this one. I am angry about this one. You're right. Okay, so number one thing for you all, this mesh has an opening, right? A hole, which you gaming artists will probably have that possibly sometimes, because why have polygons in there if they're never going to see it? Same thing for film people. So one thing I want to let you guys know about fiber mesh is it will look at both sides. So you want to turn off double side so that the fibers don't get made inside. Dude, like people, Lisa needs braces. Lisa needs braces. Lisa needs braces. Lisa, turn that double button off in display properties. Okay. And then here's the one that I love. Okay. Step one, morph target, store it. That's your step one. Okay. Step two, sculpt. I'm going to use the clay buildup, because that's my favorite brush. And just start sculpting something along here that would resemble a little bit of a beard, whatever you want, people. I'm just here cracking jokes, working on my stand-up. That's all I'm here for. I'm here to amuse Joseph Drust.
That's right.
That's about what they pay me for here now. Because
keep me happy.
I got to keep him happy. You know, he's the talent. Got to keep the talent happy. Okay, heaven forbid Joseph's not happy. God forbid it. I'll end up in his backyard as a statue. Okay, you get the gist here, right? Okay, so I got a morph target. I'm going to switch the morph target. Okay, when I now go to fiber mesh and I turn them on, it's everywhere, right? But all I need to do, all you have to do is down here. Let's everyone follow my magnifier, follow it down, follow it down, follow it down. Oh, morph target guided. Boom! Fiber mesh only where I sculpted. Guys, this is like the strongest thing of fiber mesh. Like you just sculpt where you want hair to go or fur to go or leaves to go, whatever you want to use fiber mesh for. And then now there you go. And mind you, take a look, right? The front, I made sculpted out further. So the hair's longer there, right? And you can see all the parts where I kind of sculpted, the hairs are smaller. They're not as wide. It makes sense. It's being a little more what it would be in real life, right? This for me is, yes, there you go. All right. So one other thing about this that I want to, stop laughing at me. One other thing that I want to share.
You get so mad about this one.
That one. Because it's awesome. Like that, I'm serious. That's probably the most powerful thing in fiber. One of the most powerful things in fiber mesh, besides what you can do with fiber mesh if you really want to mess with it and brace it. Let's just go really quick here about someone was talking about like hair game cards. You can use fiber mesh for this. You can use it to start your base, and then you make an insert mesh brush that then you can mess around. And don't forget, once you have this, you're good to go. So because I've got a mask here, when I preview it, now I only get it where the mask is, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to knock down so there's way less fibers. Let's go to 1,000. Now he's trying to learn. You know, he's a younger man. He's just starting to grow his beards, okay? So I've just knocked down the number of fibers lower, and then I'm going to come here to the coverage, right? So you guys can see you can knock this coverage up, right? And get larger, wider fibers, okay? So if I now just knock these down even more, let's go in the points, and at like 200, you're just getting less fibers, okay? Now, here's the thing about this. I've cranked my coverage up all the way. Right above there, there is a profile. I got to turn the magnifier off because I can't work like this. There's a curve, okay? You guys can make these go wider if you want. Right? So you can start doing this. And then, so for me, I would probably turn the twist off. You got something more like that, right? And then I'd probably do, just for the sake of it, I'm going to make my tips and stuff. And then there you go. Now, if you want the hair to be a little bit longer, right? That's your segments can help you with this down here at the bottom, right? And then you see the hair will start falling because I have gravity happening to those, okay? And then to add on top of this, you throw a texture on it and every fiber will get that texture. Right now,
yeah, and you can save this preset out too, so you don't have to set it up every time as well.
Yeah, you just save it right here. Call it your, this would be beard cards, right? And keep in mind, people, even inside of ZBrush, if you grab something that's got pure black, okay, I'm going to grab this star, and this is going to look really funny, okay? And then now you're going to see, I'm just going to say always yes. See that there's only stars because the image has pure black in it. So any image you bring in here has pure black. And every single one of these fibers are lying and stacking on top of each other in UV space. So if you were a gaming artist, you obviously would have a section of UVs that has long hair, short hair, and you would just move the UVs around on each one of these cards. So this is a great way to go, okay? The other tip, Drust, before I move on to the Z modeler one that somebody was asking, am I good?
No, get that one. Yeah,
okay.
Good.
So let me get this one, right? Is somebody was asking about painting with Z modeler. So here, let's just give ourselves some topology here. Okay, so we got this. So when you guys are going to Z modeler, all right, you have the ability to paint polygrouping, right, in this way, okay? So this is just me using the Alt key. So I'm holding Alt, my finger's still on Alt, still on Alt, still on Alt, letting go of Alt. Look at me, 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 look at me. I'm now painting the blue. And my pen is clearly still on my Cintiq. So I tap the Alt key, right? You can see I can keep changing the polygroups even on the fly while I'm actually painting, okay? And now the next thing that person asks is, well, how do I copy that polygroup and put it somewhere else in the mesh? So easy. So easy, okay? So you're gonna hover over the polygroup that you want. I'm gonna hold down the Alt key as an alternate, opposite, not the one I want. Tap, take your finger off Alt and switch to the Shift key. You're going to get back the polygroup that was originally there, right? And then now, when I'm doing this Alt thing, that's the polygroup I always get, right? So for example, I come over to this blue now, watch. Alt, tap, let go of Alt, switch to Shift. Okay, now when I go Alt, paint, and let go of Alt, what do I get? What do I got for 4 million points? I mean, absolutely nothing at the ZBrush Summit this year. The blue.
Those colors look identical, Paul. I can't even see the difference.
Well, that's because you're colorblind.
Show them the actual action too in the.
Sure, Joseph. I knew it. Okay, so here, Joseph's talking about here. I'm gonna make it quiet. This is my time now. All right, so hold the space bar. Okay, and then switch to polygroup. Right, so I'm hovering over a face, holding space bar. And down here at the bottom, see there's one that says overwrite. Let me make sure you guys can see that. Yep. And see there's additive and pick existing. In essence, what I was doing was this. Pick existing, click on the green, going back, putting it back to overwrite, and now every time, see I'm getting the green. But we put that as a fast tip, okay, to go through there. Fiber mesh can be used. I use fiber mesh for feathers. I use fiber mesh for grass. I use fiber mesh for hay. There's a lot of ways to use fiber mesh, right? So those are the ones because we got more videos to look at here. Drust, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I got one quick thing that was a question coming up.
Of course, there's something from Drust.
There's always something.
Joseph's got something for you guys, and then we're going to move on to video number 3.
All right. So we had another question about the dynamic option. So in the geometry there, you have the dynamic subdivision dynamic mode. So this was a kind of a question off of the last one that came through. And the question was asked, what's the pros of using dynamic versus not using it? So one main thing that I use all the time is I have 2 different versions of this model here. This is model 1, that's 100% dynamic. This is model 2, that is traditional subdivisions. Now, if I go back between these, let me make sure I have the same subtool selected, you will see that there is no difference appearing on my screen. However, if you look right here, one of these is almost 5 million polygons, and the other one is 281. So look how much lighter weight this model is, and I'm getting the same result. So I'm getting the same visual effect, but this model is so much lighter in terms of polygon. Now, if you go and save this, right, here's the difference. So one is almost 56 megs, the other one's 14. So dynamic will allow you to preview your models with those higher polygon counts, but it's not storing that higher polygon geometry, right, because it's a dynamic mode. So this will make your models lighter weight. And also, the whole process of dynamic works amazing with the ZModeler brush. So you model low, and then you can just come over here and toggle this on and off, and you'll see the changes. So I'm actually previewing the model with higher resolution, but I'm manipulating the lower resolution. And so for ZModeler, this is the way to go, because it'll look at creasing, it'll look at anything you have designed in there, and it's going to show you that preview of that mesh higher, but it's still that really light, low weight mesh. Now, you also have other advantages when using Dynamic Subdivision 2. One is QGrid, and QGrid is going to look at all the edges on your model, and it's going to add basically a bevel to those edges. So if you activate QGrid on this piece here, you can see now I'm getting beveling across that entire surface. And this is all preview. So if I turn this off, this is what the model looks like. But then with dynamic enabled, I'm now getting this. So I'm getting this beveling all the way around. You can change this from a chamfer to a bevel. You can make this constant. You can change the coverage. And then inside of ZBrush 2021, we also added the thickness option. So you can now use the ZModeler brush with just edge extrusions on a single poly piece of geometry. And then when you activate thickness, it's going to give you that preview of your model as if it had thickness. But the true geometry of that mesh is still just that single plane. So there's a lot of benefits for using dynamic. There's just two quick ones there. Paul, you got anything to add to that?
No, we got to move on to the next video.
Paul's got nothing to add.
I got plenty to add, but
you're trying to rein me in.
I want to get these videos. We got to rein me in, okay? We both got to be reined. All right, let's move on to video number 3 here. This is a good one too. I like this technique.
Hi guys, this is Oscar Trejo. I've been using ZBrush since 2010, and today I want to share with you a small trick on how to make your details pop a little bit more on your sculpture. This is super useful, especially for 3D printing, because this will make your details more present, more intense, and will make them more visible on your print. So the first thing is we need our mesh finished with a lot of details. So I'm just going to add some minor details to this creature just to have a little bit more information on the mesh, make it more interesting. So I'm just going to use the standard brush with the spray stroke and the alpha of the number 7, I think. Yeah. So I'm just going to add some bores. Not really that visible, it's barely visible, so this is okay. It's gonna actually be super useful for our trick. So once we finished and we have our sculpture with details, and we want to make the details a little bit more intense, we go to layers, we create a new layer, and we have to check that it's recording. And this is where the fun begins, because we want to get rid of all those details by smoothing the mesh. So by using the smooth brush, we're gonna start smoothing, and we have to be very careful not to smooth too much of the mesh. We don't want to lose the main shapes. We just want to get rid of the details like wrinkles, like pores, bumps, that kind of stuff. So be careful with the smooth brush. So I'm just gonna smooth this area. Now, once you're done, you have to go to layers again. We stop recording, and right here you have control over the opacity of the layer. So if we take the layer instead of 1 to 0, which means we have our mesh just as we had it on the very beginning of the sculpture, without any changes at all. But if we take the number below 0, we will have the effect of having the details more intense. So you can actually see the difference from taking this to 0 to -1. And it's a pretty easy and quick way to get your details in a more intense way on your sculpture. So if you have like a model that you already finished and you maybe want to make them make the wrinkles a little bit more intense, make some stuff on your mesh that will pop up a little bit more, especially for 3D printing, this is super useful, because you just need to create a new layer, smooth with it, and take the layer into -1, something like that. So hopefully this video was useful for you, and happy ZBrushing.
Bam. That's a good one. But you know what I want to add for this one, Drust? You guys need to watch our stream on Tuesday. There is something special we're going to show that'll make that workflow even go another level, right? Little plug right now. Our stream for us, for mine and Joseph's Pixologic stream, you guys might want to jot that one down. Well, we're going to add something to that workflow as well. But I'm holding on to it until that stream. I don't have anything, Drust, because I'm holding on to it until that stream.
All right, cool. Can I show you what they can do now until they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as Paul said, definitely put it on the calendar for our stream. Some good stuff. Good stuff.
4:30.
4:30. So just to kind of hit on Oscar's little tip that he showed as well. Another thing that's in here as well that it's kind of buried inside of ZBrush here. But let's say I have this frog here, and this is basically the same process that Oscar just went through, but it is a little bit of automation through a macro. So I have my frog here on this ball, and if I come to the macro tab here and go to macros, in here there's a macro called Enhance Details. This is going to automate that thing that Oscar just did. So basically, if we hit this, it's going to go through, it's going to do that kind of smooth effect to the entire model. It's then going to automatically create the layers for you. And so you see, as this is done here, I now have, over in the layer palette, I have the original and the enhanced. And so with this, you can see it's now enhanced all that details, and I can come over here and I can slide this up and down, and you'll see it's going to change that effect on the fly. So just a little macro that is inside of ZBrush that will help you get that same kind of process. Now, Oscar's going to have a little more control with this because he's going in hand doing it. But if you want an automated process that's kind of going globally across the entire mesh, you can come with the macro here and use that Enhance Details option. And then I think I was trying to think if there's any other questions that were coming through during the video.
I don't know. I'm trying to keep up.
I know. I was busy doing that.
Yeah, I'm just giving you guys, again, a link to our presentation reminder. And let's not forget, people, ZBrush is on sale on a show special right now. 20% off ZBrush, 20% off ZBrush Core, right? This is your time. If you're not using ZBrush right now, and you can get into ZBrush Core and ZBrush, we don't do this often. It's usually even once a year, and it's only during this, right?
It's true.
We're out of shirts, I believe.
Yeah, and for the layer thing with the enhanced stuff too that we just covered, if you duplicate those layers more, you're going to get even that detail spiked more. So you can take that layer that says enhanced and then duplicate it, and it's now going to like 2 times that detail on top of it.
All right.
So you can definitely keep pushing those vertices out if you need to.
Yep. Let's move on to the next video. What say you? Let's do this.
Hey everyone, my name is Paul DC. I'm a lead character modeler working in the animation industry. Today I want to show you a function within ZBrush that I use on a regular basis in the studio that helps with doing blend shapes. This is something that will allow you to move or deform a mesh and record it within a layer that can be dialed in and out. So what we want to do is, for a full facial expression, what we'll usually do is create what's called macro expressions, which is part of an expression. So you have, say, an angry face where you might have the brow down, the lips corners down, maybe the nose flares and the eyelids close a little bit. So you would have, there's your macro expressions, is your brow down, your mouth corners down, a nose flare, all that's 3 layers, and then an upper lid down, a lower lid up, all in separate layers. And then you can combine them, because you'll also want to, say, for example, have a happy face, in which case you'll have cheek up expression, and you'll also need that lower lid up to follow up with the cheek. So for this example, you can see I've got this character here, and this is a work in progress character, and it's conducive to just show you how this is going to work. So I wanted to make an expression on this guy's face. You can see I've got some subdivisions here, so I can sculpt into this a little bit more. But what I did was I sculpted the head, and I did a quick retopo on it, which you can see here. And this didn't take long. I then if I go back, you can see I've got a previous version of the file. Now this is the same character, but the face completely neutralized, and you can see how different that looks. Your facial expression is key to any character. Gives them life. So here you can see his entire face is neutral. Obviously the body is in A pose. This is before I posed it, but I've created some layers here, and they've got, as I explained, macro expressions. So you can see we've got mouth up, and you can see how I can just dial them in, and I can dial them in anywhere in between. So we've got mouth wide, got mouth corner up, got the lower eyelid down, sorry, the upper eyelid down, the lower eyelid up. We've got a corrective here, which I'll show you now how that works. You can see it doesn't make any sense on its own, but it will now in a second. And then we've got the brow up. Now these blend shapes, of course, are just to help me to land a shape or an expression that I want for this particular character. In production it's slightly different. Obviously the technicalities of the process need to be adhered to. So for brow up, it will be the brow would stay flat, and you'd raise the whole thing up, and then within the rig you would split that into different parts so the animators can shift the angle of the brows whatever way they want. So I'm going to show you how here we can create a new layer and add a new expression. So you'll see it turns black, but you can quickly just fill the layer, and that will take that away. And now we're going to create, just real quickly, the mouth corner down. So you've seen the mouth corner up, it's the same thing, just in reverse obviously. So we're just going to pull these down real quick. And ZBrush is great for this because obviously the brushes that we all know and love are fantastic for creating these nice organic shapes. Obviously you've got the option for masking, which helps a lot. And another thing is the morph target system function within ZBrush helps with this a lot, and I'll show you how that is now. So now we've pulled this down, we can just name that mouth corner down. Cool, so we'll zero that. And now let's say you are doing your blend shapes within another software, because you know you've got your pipeline where your rigging and animation and so on is done, so you've done some shapes in that other software, so you can export, assuming that you're using the same mesh, of course, you can export that from that other software. You can create a new layer, just fill that again, pull this down, you see the untitled layer here. While the record is on, you just want to go up to import, and now we have Robbie Brow down. This guy's a bank robber, so his name is Robbie Banks. So here you can see we've got the brow down macro expression. So if I want to say pull this brow down a little bit more, let's dial this out for a second. Now we've got the neutral face again. We can go down to morph target, and I already had one stored there, so it'll look like this when you go down to it. Store the morph target, go back to your layers, dial in your brow down. We can name it brow down real quick. Hit enter, hit record, and now we're going to edit this shape a little bit. So say you want to pull the inside down a little bit more, and you can see as I'm doing this, now I could use a mask, of course, which might help, but using our morph target we can pull stuff down a little bit, and then I can go in, I can mask out around that eye, and now I can just go to our, if I go BM, you can see the morph brush here, so O, and now I can paint out where I don't want this layer to affect, and what that's doing is it's actually painting back in that neutral pose that we stored. So I can close it back into the eyelid a little bit and just smooth this, dial it back, smooth it in, and then again, because I want these things to work together, I can go up, I can dial in our upper eyelid down, hit record again on my brow down, and now I'm editing. Remember, I'm on record on the brow down, so I'm only editing the brow down. And then I can just smooth here. Pull this up, make it a little bit straighter. Now we've got the two things kind of working together. So you can see if I dial this out, I've only got that. So the upper eyelid, even though we had that dialed in, the upper eyelid is completely unaffected because we weren't recording on that. So this allows you to have to also combine, and you can see this is where correctives come in, where we have the mouth wide and then the mouth corner up, which combine together. Because again, they've been done separately. So when you combine them together, you can see that we're getting a little bit of a problem with a pinch here. So what we do is we create a new layer, and that's going to be our corrective. So we, like I did with the eyelid, I dial in the two layers, and now instead of editing one of them, because I want them to work on their own, I create a new layer which will be the corrective with those two layers dialed in at the same time, and hit record on the corrective layer, the new layer. And so you can see here I have smile wide corrective, which is where I've done this, and you can see I just fixed that with that layer on, and now I've created my corrective. So now these shapes can work together. So this allows you to create a multitude of different expressions. So I could create this smile with, say, the brow, let's say the brow down. We can pull that upper eyelid down and give him that kind of sinister look. So there's another different kind of expression. Of course, you can add more and more the more you need. I can also move the mouth up slightly. Or you can in fact go into minus if I want to move it down, so that's also handy to remember. I could also pull the mouth in and have something in the middle. Or the same on any of these. Whatever I want in the middle. So let's say, because I've done all these separately, I can also have, for example, I can widen that mouth. I can use our mouth corner down a little bit, and I could raise the eyebrow, brow up, and maybe take that lower eyelid down a little bit, and the upper one a little bit. Bit of a squint, so he looks like he's about to cry. So now I have a combination of multiple different ones, and I can add as I need. For this, for production, you'll have a set amount of blend shapes that need to be corrected so that you can cover whatever expression is required by the animation. So for this function, you can also go over to the blend shapes here. So I just want to neutralize everything. I can just turn off all under the Z plugin. You have Maya blend shapes. I can just turn off all. And this will allow me now to create whatever expression I need. So say it was, let's get something close to what I have in the other one. We've got the brow up and the lower eyelid up a little bit, and we had the mouth open, which I haven't added here, but you know, as I said, you can add as many as you need, as many as you want. And once you have something that you're happy with, if this is something where you're adding or editing a blend shape that you've got for a production situation where you want to add some like flesh out a blend shape a little bit better, this is great for that, and I recommend it. I do that all the time. And for this particular example, say I have this, and now I can hit bake all, and now this is now part of the mesh. So now I can go in, I can add some subdivision levels, and this is my facial expression. I can go in and I can sculpt into this and do whatever I want. So I hope that's helpful. Enjoy making some facial expressions on your characters, and until next time, thanks.
Okay, we're back. My turn,
We're back.
and then Drust is going to go. Okay, so one thing about the layers I want to share, I saw it coming up. You can export these as layers. It's topology, right? So you can export each one of these layers individually if you want. Now, if you are a Maya user, there's actually a plugin that ships with ZBrush that's called Maya Blend Shapes. So you literally just say what ones you want and then hit this button, and it'll automatically launch Maya, take each one of those layers as a blend shape inside of Maya. It's that simple, okay? So you would do the same thing for any other program, but we made this plugin for Maya years ago because obviously Maya was being used a lot in the film industry, and this was a very popular workflow for film artists. So every layer is going to be exported as its own, okay? And so the layers would just, you know, you turn them on and off like he did, okay? Now I want to share two things, and then we're going to go to Joseph because we got a couple other videos here we need to show. Number one, the one thing I want to share is the move brushes, okay? And one in particular that we all use, for those that are ZBrush users right now, okay, is you're using the move brush, right? You're just moving things around, whee, right? So I'm sure you're all aware of, or most of you are aware of, if you hold the Alt key, yeah, we move along the normals, right? So I'm moving this model along the normals. That's why it's looking weird. So if I come up here to the forehead, it looks like...
That's a good one. That's the one I use all the time.
I use it all the time too, right? And if you guys just grab, it's just like grabbing with your hand. Now, there is another one that people aren't that familiar with or aware of. When you click, I can actually move along the surface, right? So you see that? It's moving that way along the surface. So this is handy for when you're doing blend shapes, right? So I can keep moving this, and I know it's following the curvature of the actual model. See that? Very different. It's just flowing all in there. I'm not telling you how I'm going to do this because it's my secret. It's mine to keep forever. Okay? Too bad. That's how I'm rolling now. No, how you do that?
You just hold shift.
Stop it. Yes. Don't hold shift, Drust. Be careful. Be careful. Because shift's going to give you the smoothing brush. No longer.
No, you got. There's an order. There is an order.
There is an order. You tap on the surface, then hold the shift key. That grabs another line of code, people, and tells the move brush to move along the surface. Okay? So again, tap on the surface. So you'll see the brush icon disappear, and then hold the shift key. And you can see my mouth is now moving along the face, right? It's moving in the direction that I was going that way. Okay? So that's number one. The second one is this one. Okay? I'm sure you guys have all wanted to do this where you're moving things around. Okay? And like I want to start moving the lip. You see how the upper lip's moving a lot and the bottom lip's barely moving? So let me show this on something else that's even more visually understood. So we got a bottom lip dog, right? And upper lip. You see how only the bottom lip's moving? And you see I've done no masking here at all. See that? There's no masking. I'm just moving the topology. Look at that, right? So there is a topology flow that's happening in this dog. For those of you that are the animators that were talking in here, right? you're going to have a flow here, right? So this is the flow. You can actually restrict your brush to the flow. So what I've turned on is move topological. So this is telling the move brush now to pay attention to the topology and how it's actually flowing along the surface. So that's why when I go with a pretty big brush size, you see only the bottomlet's moving, because this topology up here has nothing to do with this topology down here. Absolutely nothing, right? And by the way, you guys can do this with any brush, okay? So if I'm coming in here, right, how many times have you been like sculpting along like this, and then you got a big brush and you start doing this, you're getting the upper part and the lower part. All you have to do is come here to the brush side, the brush menu, okay? Auto masking, and way down at the bottom, there's a topological button. Just turn that puppy on, and now look, I'm only sculpting the lower lip. Delicious, delicious. I'm gonna send it to Drust now because we got more videos and we can't keep hogging this time. So Drust,
yeah, I got quick ones.
Take it away. Take it away. Oh, we got a new name for it. Topology.
Right, so look, we're back to the dog. We're back to the dog. So one of the questions in chat, quick one. Michael Pavlovich, when he was showing his, he kind of hit on it with his little stitches. So the question was, how can you do like curves and wires? So there's a bunch of default brushes that are called IMM brushes, and IMM stands for insert multi-mesh. So these brushes contain parts inside of them. So you can select a brush and then select a part, and then you can apply that apart to your model. Now, one thing with these IMM brushes, there's some of these that are going to follow a curve. So like the IMM curve brush here. So if I select this one and I have my dog model here, up here we have a list of parts we can cycle through. We can also press M on our keyboard, which is going to show these parts like this as well. And then we come through here and just select one. So if I come through here and just select the wire part there, I can now click on a part of the dog and drag. And when I do this, it's going to generate a curve. So if I click and drag, you're going to start get this curve drawn out. And then when I release, that's now going to be populated with that insert mesh part. So this is how you can make wires and things like that on your models. Now, after this has been drawn out, this curve is still active, and now we can manipulate it. So if I want this to be bigger, I can increase my draw size and then click on the curve, and you're gonna see it's going to update that size. So now I've just gone through and made, let me move that here because I've got there's two different draw sizes. You got a yellow, you got a blue and a red. And so now I can get that curve larger. If I change this down, it's now gonna shrink it back down and be smaller. Now with this active as well, I can start dragging this around. So I can click and drag it and start moving this around my model. So I can start tailoring this where I want it to go. I can pull it around his head like this. And if you have an option called snap turned on, it's going to snap to the topology of your mesh. So we have other options we can do here. So you can see snap is enabled. It's going to snap to the mesh. We also have different modes for the curve option. And one of these is liquid. And liquid's going to allow you to just keep drawing the curve out, and it's going to keep extending. So there's a lot of different ways you can use this curve brush. Now, in addition to this, you can also apply variations to your curves. And if you want to see how a curve brush is made, if you simply select one of these and then select a polymesh 3D object, you can go to the geometry, modify topology area here and do mesh from brush. And this is going to extract that IMM part from that brush and give it to you as a subtool. So you can look at any of these brushes or presets that's inside a ZBrush. You can extract those pieces out and see how they're made. I'll also put some links in the chat to some Ask ZBrush videos on creating some of these IMM curve brushes as well. That's it, Paul. On to the next.
All right, we're going to move on to the next video, everybody. So more to come. Let's go. Next video.
Hello, my name is Franco Carlesimo. I'm going to be showing you a few tips and tricks used in my daily workflow. Hope you enjoy it. This is something I've been working on, and I want to show you guys how I've been doing some of this texture around here. You can do it many ways, obviously, but one way that I've been doing, see here, you have the standard brush. We can go around here and start doing something like that, and moving my hand in a way that's going to give me that unevenness. But a faster way of doing this is going to the brush, to the stroke, and here you have one way of doing this is going to the stroke And here you have an option about stroke shading. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So what we can do, what this does is going to give some motion, as you can see here, some unevenness to the strokes. So let me show you. Let's crank this up so you can really see what is going on. There we go. So I found this a faster way of doing this kind of texturing, and my hand gets less tired for sure, because my strokes are just linear, but the result is much more texturized. That is one thing. Hope it helps. Now, one thing is that remember that this applies to all the brushes that you're using, so once you are done, just turn it off again. And here I have another thing that I do a lot. Let's say this is going to leave some goo around this beautiful bell. So let's just create some geometry, drag, accept. Now we have some geo here. I'm going to straight away create into dynamesh. See, and now I want this to follow along the surface of the belt. Now I can do this like doing this and turning around, and it's going to take me a lot of time. Instead of doing that, what I do is I use the snake hook brush, and if I hold Alt before pressing the cursor on the surface, it's going to, as you can see, is going to follow the surface that is placed above. Now, if we do it like this, it's going to break every time. So the best way of doing this, instead of going and dragging every time to convert this into dynamesh, is just using the sculptress mode. So that is going to be much easier, to generate polygons, and going to allow me to go, and it's going to definitely give me a better result. I want to show you guys a little bit. I might speed this up. So remember, just holding Alt. See how it's following the surface. Just dragging outside to give me more polygons. Now this is definitely going to take time, but it's not going to take as much time as if we do it in a different way. And the good thing is that if this will be for 3D printing, this is already fully in contact. It's super easy to manipulate. Okay, that was it for this one. I hope you enjoy, and happy ZBrushing.
Oh, that was another good one, huh? How many people knew about that alt trick with the snake hook? It's been there for a while. Drust, we don't hear you. Or is it just me?
Because I get so loud during these things. I'm so excited. I got to mute myself. So I was saying I didn't bring it up when you were doing the move brush because I knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming, right? Yeah. I kind of foreshadowed it. Okay. Foreshadow. Right? So, Drust, you got it. I'm not gonna. We still got a couple more videos we gotta get. And this segment's actually going to be coming to an end soon. So, do you have anything you want to add on top of that one?
Just one quick one.
You're gonna show Joseph's screen. He's gonna have a little tip for you.
All right. So, Franco, when he was doing his thing, he mentioned doing the inflate option, and so just to kind of recap on that quick. So all you need to do is have the Gizmo 3D on your model. And so if I have the demoed here, and so instead of coming down here to this deformation tab and doing the inflate down here like this, if you have the Gizmo 3D active, just hold down the control key, come across scale. You'll see as I hover over the gizmo, it's going to tell you this at the bottom too. So we like to embed these little helpful tips and stuff. So you can see control to inflate. So I'm just holding control, and as I do that, it's going to perform that inflate as well. You can go in and out and make, you know, the demo head look really, really pretty. But that's what Franco kind of hit on there. I just want to make sure you guys and gals knew about it. That's it.
All right.
On to the next.
On to the next video. Or no. All right, boys, you can play the next video. We'll move on to that one now. Guys in the booth. We lost the guys in the booth.
We lost them. We
lost
them.
them in the booth. Yeah, so
What's up, guys? My name is Derek Pellegrini and I've been using ZBrush basically every day since 2016, and this model that we have here on screen was fully done using ZBrush. It's based on artwork made by Leandro Ramos, and on this video I'm gonna show you guys a technique that I like to use that consists basically on using masks, extract, ZBrush, ZModeler, and Pinel loops. For that I'm going to recreate the sneakers of this character, so let's dive right into ZBrush. First, I'm going to duplicate the body. Then I will isolate this part and use as a base. Delete the hidden part and close the holes. Now we have a nice base to work on. Let's make a mask. Now we can use the extract to make a separated mesh. Hit the accept button to generate the new mesh. I will use only the shell of this, so let's isolate and delete the hidden part. Now we need to generate a better mesh. So let's use ZBrush for that. Maybe we need to use it a couple of times to get a nice result. Now I will repeat this process again. Paint a mask of the shape I want. I try to be as clean as possible with my mask and my lines to have a nice extracted shape. Use the extract to make a separated mesh. Hit the accept button to generate the new mesh. Let's isolate the shell and delete the hidden parts. Now we can use the ZBrush again. And we can use it until we are happy with the results. That's looking good. I will keep making masks to generate the new mesh using the extract. The extract button is under the sub tool extract subpalette, and then you have the extract button. Oops, I have a little dirt in here. I will fix that by isolating only what I want and deleting the hidden part. I will repeat this process, isolate the shelf part and delete the hidden part, ZBrush it again. You can find the ZBrush under Tool, Geometry, ZBrush. Again, I will use the Paint Mask brush and paint the shape I want. Extract it once more. Don't forget to hit the accept button. Otherwise, when you turn your mesh, your extraction will disappear. It's time to ZBrush it again. All the ZBrushes I'm doing, I'm using the half option, and I keep pushing the ZBrush button until I have a good topology. Now I will create another part duplicating a previous extracted mesh. I will use the ZModeler brush, and holding the Alt key, I will create a polygroup selection on my mesh. Let's isolate this new created selection and delete the hidden part. Now I will just move a little bit this part so they don't overlap each other. Let's duplicate it once more. Let's use the ZModeler again, but this time let's use the polygroup polyloop option. With that, we are able to create a polygroup around a loop on our mesh. Now I will select the polygroup and delete the hidden one. Let's apply a little bit of inflate. This way one mesh don't overlap each other. Duplicate it once more. I will use the ZModeler brush, use the polygroup polyloop function again. Hit the new polygroup and use the auto groups. Isolate the polygroup I want and delete the hidden part. select another part I don't want, invert the selection, and delete the hidden part again. Seems like I missed 2 polygons in here. Let me fix that and delete. Apply just a little bit of inflate so the meshes don't overlap. And I will keep doing this process until I have all the parts that I need to my sneakers. Paint, mask selection, or polygroup selection using extract and ZBrush. The great thing about this technique is that you end up with a good topology on your model. You can pretty easily make any shape you want, and that's great when you're designing something, especially if you want to do something quick. Another advantage of having a mesh like this is that opening UVs is going to be a little bit easier. And you can even use it for production if you are careful enough. Alright, let's duplicate the tongue mesh to create the lace of our sneakers. I will use the ZModeler brush and the polygroup. After I select what's going to be the first lace, I will hold the Alt key to change the polygroup color. Then I will keep going, making different polygroup colors for each lace. Now isolate the parts I don't need and delete hidden. Let's use the ZModeler again, but this time let's use the bevel on edge. I will use the bevel to create a separation between the lace of my sneakers. Now just select the polygroups I want and delete the ones I don't. I believe it will work. I just need to inflate to separate a little bit from the original mesh. Alright. Now that I have all the parts I need, I will add some thickness to it using the Pinel loops. The Pinel loops button is under Tool, Geometry, Edge Loop Subpalette. I will repeat this process for all my meshes to add thickness to all of them. I'm gonna use the ZModeler brush and use the insert action on my head. If you need to see all the options you have with the ZModeler brush, hover over your mesh and press the space bar. A menu will appear on your screen with a bunch of different options, operations, and modifiers. You have different options on this menu depending whether you're hovering over a vertex, edge, or a face. I'm just using the insert edge to sustain all my meshes so they keep crispy when I use the dynamic subdivision. So now I can start to give a little bit of form to my shapes using the inflate brush in here. Like this. And I keep going around the model and adding form to the mesh. I think it's looking good for now. Just a bit more in here. I need to fix this back part over here. A little bit of inflate. Little move, and I think we are done. To make these sneakers eyelets, I will use the Insert Multi-Mesh Model Kit. Press M to open the menu with all the parts, and I'm gonna select the Pipe 8. Now I will carefully insert the eyelets on the upper part of my sneakers. Just drag and drop. Now I can press the W key and use the move gizmo to place my eyelids on the perfect position. Like this. Alright. We are almost there. Just a little bit. Okay, just need to move a little bit the lace mesh. Alright. And now I'm gonna replicate the same process for all the eyelets. If you hold the Ctrl key and move, ZBrush will create a copy of the unmasked part. Just need to fix my upper part with the move brush. Now I use the inflate on this one. You can find the inflate on Tool under Deformation. Scale down a little, and yeah, I think I think it's done. I want to add a detail on the base. For that I use an insert multi-mesh brush that I created. But first I need a nice surface to use my insert brush on. I use the same techniques as before to do that. Loops, selection, word selection, delete hidden. This brush is pretty much an open cylinder that I use with the curve mode option on. I just need to drag, hold the shift key and drop on a mesh, then my cylinder will go around the loop. Now I just need to delete the mesh that I use as a base and we are done. I think it's looking good. Now the character has a nice sneakers. I'm missing colors on these sneakers, so let's fix that. Using the color menu and the fill object button. This will add the color you have on your color selector to the mesh you have selected. Just remember to turn on the RGB option on your brush, otherwise this will not work. You can find the RGB button in the draw menu. Since I have separated pieces, it's easy to add colors as I want. So I think it's looking good. Now I have a nice sneakers with clean topology done using ZBrush and Pinel loops. Yeah. Okay, so we are done. I hope you guys enjoy it and ciao.
There we go.
There you go. You're muted. You Matthew McConaughey.
Another good one. Another good one.
I know you met. So just a few. Like the Matthew McConaughey drop. All right. All right. All right. All right. Take it away, Drust.
All right. So some quick ones here. So as Derek was going through, he was generating with panel loops. So I just want to show another workflow with this, and this is with some of the new features that are in ZBrush 2021. So I've got another shoe here. Not as clean as Derek's there. And then I'm going to go to the brush palette over here. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to locate the insert primitives H brush. Now the primitives H brush, the H stands for half. So these means all these brushes have open edges. So if you look at the primitives normal one versus this one, they have some of the similar shapes, but the H one always has an open hole. And these are useful for using with Mesh Fusion, which was one of the features in a way long ago version of ZBrush. There's some Ask ZBrush videos on that if you want to figure out what that is. So since this is an insert mesh brush, you can see all the parts I have at the top here, and I'm looking for this one called single poly. And so as Derek was going through and generating these kind of designs on a shoe, he had existing topology that was already really clean on his mesh. And he was using the ZBrush brush to kind of isolate those parts and pull them out, and then use those panel loops to add that thickness back in. Another option now with ZBrush 2021 is now we can take a mesh like this single poly here, we can apply it to the surface of my model. And then you can see as I draw it out, it's going to come in directly on the surface of that mesh. I can now split this off by going to Tool, Subtool, Split, Split Unmasked Points. And this is now going to take that little poly there that I created and split it off to its own subtool. Now that this is isolated, I can now come down to the dynamic area. And in here, I can use the new dynamic thickness. So instead of using panel loops, I can come through here and apply the dynamic thickness. As you can see, as I apply this, that little piece of geometry that I just inserted is going to get thickness. So it was a single-sided poly, and now I've given it thickness. Now, right now I have that smooth subdivision on, so you can see it's shrinking some. So as it's dividing, it's going to shrink those edges in because I didn't have any of that polygroup creasing or the crease polygroup that Paul likes. So I'm going to turn this down to 0, and now I'm going to see that full poly there. And I can see the thickness of this to determine how far that is off the surface. You can also change the offset on this. So if you're doing 3D printed models, you can change the offset to make it go into the surface more or out of the surface as you want it. So now I've just taken this polygon here, added thickness through dynamics instead of polygroups. Now, once you have this object here, this poly inserted, we can now use the ZModeler brush. So I'm going to come over to the brush palette over here and then locate the ZModeler brush down here. And I'm going to hover over our poly here. So as Derek was going through, you can select the options for the ZModeler brush. And what I want to do is I want to set up a few of these. So on the poly, I'm going to hover over that and press space bar. In here, I'm going to change my action to do nothing. Then over the edge, I'm going to press spacebar and change this to extrude, or not extrude. I want extrude. Where is it at, Paul? Where is it at? This one, yeah, extrude. And then down here with the modifiers, I want to change this to snap to surface. And then I want to hover over the point and then go into the ZBrush brush as well, change this to the slide or move, and then set snap to surface on that one too. And now what I'm doing is I can take this poly and I can generate topology using this extrude function. And as I extrude this out, it's going to snap to the surface. So you can use this method to come through and start generating topology and designs on your meshes as well. So another way, say if you have a dynamesh model of your starting shoe and you don't have that clean topology that Derek had, you can use this feature and then come through and build your own topology. Then you can move things around with the ZBrush brush. So I'm using the move snap to surface and then also the edge extrude, and I can come through and this is going to give me, you know, smart snapping between those surfaces, and I can start designing those forms on my shoe. Now, since this is dynamic, I can come over here and change the thickness on this. So if I want it thicker or thinner, I can also put my smooth subdivisions on it. I can also change when the smooth subdivisions are applied by using this post subdivision option here. And this is going to give me different results on my model as well. If I want this to be true geometry afterwards, I can come through here and click apply, and then that's going to change it to the topology. So it'll give you a similar result to what Derek had after he did his panel looping. Now, quick note on the panel loops as well. If we come down here to that area, if I can find it here, edge loops. Now, the panel loops are going to give you a little more kind of robustness on terms of that edge thickness, but it's also going to be permanent. So once you activate panel loops, it's going to give you mesh geometry. So it's no longer going to be dynamic. However, with the panel loops, you can change the bevel profile of that edge thickness. So if you wanted to be rounded, you can come over here and you can change this bevel profile slider here, and it's going to give you a new profile for that panel loop. I know Paul is a big fan of the panel loop process, and he just goes nuts with it. So.
Yes, I do. I use it for a lot of things. I even used it to create thickness for printing, 3D printing.
So, and neither of these ways are like wrong or right. There's multiple ways inside of ZBrush. This is one thing that you should all just take from this, is that ZBrush has a ton of ways to do things. So do what you want to do and what feels comfortable to you as well. So if you have a model with nice clean topology, go the panel loops way. I'm just bringing up another option that, you know, may spark some ideas or some interest.
Bring it up.
So there you go, Paul. We on to the next?
We got one more video. This is the last video, and then we're moving on to the next segment. We got one more video for this segment, so we're going to move on to this next video. We got Spicer coming up.
Hey, everybody. It is Spicer, your spicy sensei, if you will. I wanted to show you an operation that makes my life so much easier when I'm sculpting, and it's called frame mesh. That's how I got this edge work around all this leather and this armor using just one simple operation. Let me show you how it works, okay? What we're gonna do is we're going to use this these leather straps right here to kind of give you a workflow example of how I would get this done. So first what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off all the color information for my entire project by holding Shift and then clicking this paintbrush, and you can see it's turning it all off, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Ctrl and Shift, and I'm going to select this polygroup right here. And then if I want to bring up everything that's attached to these particular faces, I'm going to hold Ctrl, Shift, and A. And you can see it brings everything that's attached to that mesh right there. All right, I'm going to invert my selection, and then I'm going to choose this mesh down here as well. I'm going to hold Ctrl, Shift, and Alt to get rid of it. Invert my selection, then Ctrl, Shift, and A. Okay, so let's delete hidden. You can find that under geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. Okay, so now what we have is just these straps and these polygroups. So to use frame mesh, you either need an open border, polygroups, or creased edges, or a combination of the three. So if we go to stroke up here, and then we go to curve functions, when we open this up, it's going to have all three of these highlighted right here. For this particular example, all I want is polygroups to be framed whenever I click frame mesh. So I'm going to turn off creased edges, I'm going to turn off border, and then I'm only left with polygroups. And now when I press frame mesh, you can see I'm getting IMM curve lines all around where there's an intersection of polygroups. So what I want to do now is I want to go to my curve tube, and I'm going to get a size of around 1, and I'm going to click here, and you can see that it's created the trim right there really quickly, and I don't have to hand draw it around. And when I commit the mesh, by clicking anywhere that there isn't a an IMM line, it's also connected. So when we press dynamic subdiv, you can see that there's not an opening anywhere. So it's really effective. Let me show you how to do it one more time. I'm going to go to stroke. I'm going to make sure polygroups is selected. I'm going to click frame mesh. I'm going to use whatever IMM curve brush that I want, and I'm going to click right there, and you can see it's going to commit that mesh. So right there. But you can see here at the bottom, it doesn't complete that that entire loop. So what the problem is that we have an extra polygroup here. So let me show you again. We can press frame mesh, and then whenever I click here, you can see it's only going on the top because there's a bunch of other polygroups here. So to fix that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control Shift click this piece, and then I'm going to press Control Shift A, and then I'm going to click it again, and then I'm going to press Control W to quickly polygroup this, and then Control Shift click outside by mesh. So now I only have 2 different polygroups as opposed to each side having a polygroup. So when I go to stroke, frame mesh, you can see it's one continuous line. I can click right there and it goes all the way around. Okay. To commit the mesh, you just click on the mesh anywhere that there is not an IMM line. See, let me zoom in here so it's a little bit easier. Boom. And now it is committed. Okay. So let me show you the other functions with our trusty cylinder. Okay. So we've got our cylinder here. I'm just going to dynamesh it really quickly and then press Control W so we only have one polygroup. Then I'm going to go BSI to get my slice curve, and that way I can just go here. I can let's get a dramatic line here. And then I have my 2 polygroups. So if you ever have an intersection of polygroups and you want to crease there, you can do that really quickly by going to geometry, crease, and then crease PG, which stands for crease Paul Gaboury, or crease polygroups. So now whenever I have an intersection, you can see it's adding that crease right there. Okay. So now what I can do is I can go back up to stroke. I can, instead of polygroups, I can say creased edges and then frame my mesh. And then I can get a curve tube or curve strap snap here. Get a little bit larger of a brush size and click, and boom, straps. So this could quickly be your belt. It can be straps for armor. It can be straps for your other straps. Who knows, right? Very quickly you can get this, and you can see it's closed off. So when I press D, you can see that there's no opening here either. Let me show you the last option in frame mesh, which is border. Okay, so I'm going to hold Control and Shift and click right here, and then I'm going to delete hidden. So now we have this open edge to our mesh, and I'm going to go up here to stroke, and I'm going to select border now, and I'm going to click frame mesh. So now anywhere that there is an opening, we're automatically going to get this IMM line, and then we can choose curve strap snap. We can change our curve, and we can go to curve tube, and we can change that as well. We can go here and change our size and click it again, change our size more and click it again. And you're always going to have that option to quickly change things as long as you have the IMM line here. And then we click anywhere that there isn't an IMM line, and then we have that going right there. So now the mesh is committed, and we can sculpt on it or do anything else that we need to. I hope this helped you out. I hope you are able to use this in all of your future sculpts. And make sure to go follow me on ZBrush Live. I stream every week for them. I want to thank everybody on the Pixologic team for having me here. It is a great honor, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your summit.
Back. That's
All right,
Spicer. Oh man, that's Spicer.
Oh, that's spicy. Spicy,
So
spicy.
spicy. So spicy.
So that's the last video for this segment, but I want to show a quick trick, and we're going to be moving on to the next segment. But guys, if you've enjoyed that segment, tomorrow it's over 3 hours, just that one segment. So Drust and I will be doing that again tomorrow with all these amazing artists. So we're doing this type of segment every single day. So one thing I want to share about the insert mesh brushes that some of you might not know before we move on to our next segment is when you guys draw something out, okay, one thing that you're going to have the ability to do is when your brush size is red, and when you scroll over, it's blue, like an aqua color. You can be Aquaman, right? So when you're hovering over the curve here, there are things you're going to also be able to do with the curve. Number one, okay, yeah, click on the curve and then hold the control key, and you can actually rotate what's being applied on the curve, right? So again, click on the curve, hold the control key, and you can rotate. So the larger brush size you go with, the more of the curve you rotate. Okay, so again, that's a click and then control. And keep in mind, there are two brush sizes. There's your aqua, blue, and then there's your red. Your red is controlling the size of the meshes that are on the curve. Your blue is controlling the curve in essence. Okay?
The influence you have.
The other thing that you can do is click and then hold the shift key, and you can actually smooth things out, right? So I just got rid of a bunch of the curve there, right? So again, click, hold the shift key, and you can see I just smoothed and made that all perfectly straight right there, right? So that's another one for you all. The other thing is in the stroke palette, in your curve options, these 4 buttons, I love to use these. Here's elastic. You can grab anywhere on the curve and pull, and you're actually adding to the existing curve. And it's think of it as a rubber band. Like if you guys got a rubber band and pull one way, it's only going to go, the rubber band's parallel, it's going to go parallel. Think about that's kind of what this elastic's doing. Wherever you click, the two sides are just going to keep going with it, right? Right? So in a way, that's why it's called elastic. Now, if you're like me and you want to go a little crazy with this stuff, then that's what liquid's for. Liquid's going to allow you guys to go in any direction that you want. And this is kind of how you can add things to the curve. You see, I can keep drawing out the curve, and then I can keep adding more in the middle, right? So that's another thing for you. Now, the last thing before we take a little quick break, before we move on to the next segment.
Well, I have one thing I want to add.
Yeah. Okay, symmetrically, this is something I think for James Cain's when he was talking about like his wings. Here's a great way I like to make wings, okay? I like to turn on this lock start and lock end. And I like to use the curve quad fill, okay, or curve tri fill. So you got a curve quad fill and you got a curve tri fill. There's 2 of them. One of them is going to make quads. One of them is going to make triangles. I know it's rocket science here, quads and tris. And then now when you draw out, right, the thickness of this red draw size will give me the thickness that I have, okay? It might help if I got rid of my subdivision levels. I undid too many times, right? And so you can see this thickness that's generating. This is based upon this draw size, the red one. So if I make this smaller, click on the curve, you see it goes smaller. If I go bigger, click on the curve, it goes bigger, right? And then when you're in the blue, the reason why I lock the start and end, okay, is now I can go really big and I can move this around, and you see the starting point and the end point aren't coming off the mesh. This is a great way to make like leaves, wings, butterfly, whatever you want, okay? I found this very useful. It's a great way to work with something. And this is just creating a surface as we're moving the curve around. And again, that's in the stroke palette, lock start and lock end. Okay, we're going to move on to Mr. Joseph Drust now.
All right, a quick one. All right, so I got a little fishy.
Fishy here, fishy.
So questions, we had one question about the ZBrush and how it was generating. So if you, depending on how you drag the brush out from top to bottom or bottom to top, is going to determine where the start and the end of that curve is going to happen. So I just have the metal ZBrush created, and this was an awesome brush for zippers. And if I drag from top to bottom and release on the fish here, you can see that the start of the zipper is above where my start of my stroke was, and the other one's at the bottom. And if I go this way now, you see it's going to do the reverse. So if you need to flip the zipper, basically you want to go the opposite way, just change how you're drawing the stroke out on your model, and then it will change the reverse of the flip of the zipper there. And that will hold true for any insert mesh IMM brushes that are using tri-part functionality. So these brushes are set up with 3 parts. So you have a start and an end, and then a part in the middle that repeats as it drags out. One more quick thing, since Spicer was using the curve strap snap brush, is I want to just bring up that there's also modifiers for this brush as well. And so if we drag it out normally, come across the model, just drag it out, you're going to get that strap. And then, of course, you always want to do straps on straps on straps. I mean, why not?
Why wouldn't you?
So,
why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? And so with this, I drew it out, and you can see it's coming out as that flat shape, right? So there's a few modifications you make to this. If you want this to, be more round, so say you like how the curved strap snap brush is working, but you want to change the shape of it. Like, you don't have to make a new brush for this. If I want to be a tube instead of the strap, I can come over here to the brush palette. We're just going to dock this aside by clicking this little icon here. And we go to the modifiers area. And in here, we have a brush modifier. Now, the brush modifier is going to look at this curve strap snap brush. And since this brush by default is set up like this, if we change this brush modifier, it's going to change how many sides the strap's going to be when it's drawn out. So right now, as I drew it out, it was coming out with 4 sides. So that's what this brush modifier is telling me. It's going to give me that square shape. If I change this to 8, and then now come through here and drag this out, my strap now is going to start to get the little bend to it, right? So it's adding more radial divisions based on that brush modifier. So I've now taken it and made it from that flat strap to now it's got a little bend into it. Now you'll also notice that as I drew this out, it's still a little flat, right? So it's still mimicking that strap effect. And this, as Paul just showed, is based on the intensity. So right now I'm at an intensity of 25. So this is taking that square shape and it's flattening it down. So if I change my intensity now and now redraw this out, now I have a tube, right? So this is all the same brush. All I'm doing is changing the brush modifier. If I want to draw this out as a tube and now do it 32 sides, I can type in 32 and then now come across the model, drag this out. You'll see now I have this. And that's the same brush and it's just being manipulated by this brush modifier. One last thing with the curve brushes is you can also control the depth, and that can be done in the depth slider here. By default, when you create a IMM brush, it's going to try to embed the depth value to the maximum that the brush is created with. So if your brush value is, full size in a ZBrush default space, it's going to put it at like that 100 and it's going to be sticking right on the surface. If you change this to 0, it's now going to embed into your model. So if you need to make those straps on straps on straps, but you need to do it for 3D printing, you can set that embed value higher or lower, and then this is now going to change how this is coming out on your mesh. So if I set it to a low value and draw this out, you can see it's sinking more into the model. And then if I set this to a high value and draw this out, you can see now it's coming off the model like so. So just a few little manipulations there, and that's all the same curve brush, and all I've done is change modifiers. So another little thing there to add to what Spicer showed.
Love it. Love it. All right, so that's the end of that segment. We're going to be moving on. We're going to take a little 2-minute little break here. Well, it's not really a break. We're just getting recompiled, getting our next guests in for the ZBrush in education. So we're going to take a couple minutes here, and then we're going to go right into that segment. And again, reminding you, this segment is also happening tomorrow and on Tuesday. So if you really enjoyed it, and don't forget, Tuesday, Joseph and I are showing some extra stuff in the beginning of the stream for our special presentation as well. All right. So again, this segment will be repeating every day, and tomorrow's is extra long. It's like a whole nother hour and a half more than this. Right. So if you really enjoyed this, tune in. So we'll see you here in a couple minutes. We're going to be back with our panel for our ZBrush in education.